I have a MacBook and it's amazing. When I put it into my setup, I plug it into a monitor and that's not amazing. The size is, but the colors, the contrast, the clarity, worst of all, that anti-reflective coating is just okay. I would love to have an Apple Studio display, but then I'm reminded of the price. There are other 5K displays that are a few $100s cheaper, but that doesn't quite come close to a 10-year-old iMac. Despite being actually over 10 years apart, the Studio display and this iMac have something in common, and that is the 5K display panel itself. So in theory, this is the exact same display quality for significantly less. This is a 27-inch 5K iMac from 2015. I spent $200 getting this used off of eBay. And unfortunately, it's not as simple as just plugging it in like a normal display because Apple. So I'm gonna turn this into a monitor, replace the one on my desk, and then actually use it before I decide if I'm gonna keep it or go back. Now I've seen two main ways of getting this iMac working as a monitor, and both do have their pros and cons. The first is the harder way, where I would have to basically strip down all of the internal components of the iMac. Then I'd have to replace it with a logic board that would run on the panel and then hook up some cables. That stuff kind of scares me. But once you have that done, it's just a regular monitor. You can hook it up to DisplayPort or HDMI, and long-term, that is the best bet. But the most convenient way, at least short-term, is using this little thing here, which is called Luna Display. All you do is plug it into your host computer, which would be my MacBook, and then you download a software on the iMac, and then you download the other version of the software on your MacBook, and it connects. I think essentially what this little thing does is trick your MacBook into thinking you have a display plugged in. You can even set up your iMac to log in on boot and then have the Luna Display app open at login, so you don't even have to keep a keyboard or whatever plugged in. I guess that's also one of the downsides of Luna Display is you need the iMac to actually be working as a computer, but I ran into some maybe more niche issues. By default, the Luna connects wirelessly, which is fine for some things, but I found it was a little laggy, so you could just connect it with a USB cable, USB-C to USB-A, and then just switch the settings to connect with USB. And yeah, the lag was actually still there. Apparently the strongest connection is with Ethernet, so I did a whole thing trying to set that up, and I did. And the lag was still there. Now this wasn't like, there's a little bit of lag, but I guess it's manageable. This was like, you're watching a YouTube video and you can still notice something's a little off. After hours of testing, I found that the main culprit is the Retina mode, which is also known as the make it actually look good, because that's the entire point of doing any of this in the first place mode. It just can't keep up with encoding and decoding a 5K display. So that's when I decided, like, yeah, I'm ordering the tools, I'm ordering the logic board, and I'm gonna have to rip this apart and do it the good old-fashioned way. If you go the Luna Display route, it would total to around $300, but if you go with the turning it into a real monitor route, it's gonna be around $400. So it is gonna be a little more expensive, but for the things that you'll now be able to take advantage of, is it worth it? To find out, now that all of the parts have actually arrived, it's time to crack this bad boy open. This is not a tutorial, by the way. I'm gonna leave links below from people that actually know what they're doing. Now, as we'll see, it didn't all go smoothly, but with the iFixit guide that will also be linked below, it really breaks it down and has nice visuals for each step for taking an iMac apart, which the first step of doing so was cutting the adhesive around the display so you can remove it and try not to have it fall out. Overall, that step was easy, but step number 2 out of 4 was painful, literally painful in the physical sense. It was mostly just unscrewing things, which is boring, but throwing on some good music in the background, it should be an easy task. But with it being an older iMac, some parts weren't the smoothest to unscrew. I was able to get everything but one section, which happened to be the biggest section, the motherboard, so it needed to come out. And there were 2 screws that would not come out. So my final plan was to put my entire body weight into it while unscrewing it, and we'd be good to go. Well, that hurt a lot. I would not recommend doing that. But the show must continue. As you saw, I was good to go. after I stopped the bleeding and decided on final plan number 2, which hopefully doesn't include having my screwdriver slip and sending my right hand right into all the other components. It sliced my hand and destroyed my thumbnail in about 3 ways. I even found a little piece of metal under it. That was not the type of thumbnail I was accounting for while planning this video, but it was clear that that screw was not going anywhere. But since I knew I didn't need the motherboard, I had to make the decision to just completely rip it out. I also busted out the RAM door in the back because that's going to be useful for the next section, which is putting in the new logic board. And that was a great change of pace after almost 2 hours of struggling. I went with the most popular stone Tascam board, and I was just able to tape it up in a spot that I cleared out, making sure to have the ports of the board facing towards that RAM door, and also aligning the control board so I can actually click it and control the monitor settings. I plugged in the power supply, keeping it outside, a USB-C and a DisplayPort cable, which both support 5K, and that way I won't have to bother opening it up again if I need to change out a cable in the future. I reattached the display cable just to make sure it worked before I sealed it up, while also trying to make sure it doesn't fall over. And it worked. All I had to do now was just put on the adhesive that I bought from iFixit, and scariest of all, I had to line it up properly. It's like a screen protector, except instead of it protecting your screen, it is your screen, and just, you know, the most important component of this all. But of course, I almost nailed it. There's a super small slight gap on the right side that is so annoying, but I'll happily accept it because it is working. That was an absolute war that took me 5 hours. 4 hours and 45 minutes of that was struggling, but I have went ahead and replaced the ultrawide with the 5K iMac, and to avoid the, I guess, initial honeymoon phase influencing my opinion, now I just have to work on it for a week, and then I'll report back with my full experience of converting and using a 5K iMac as my monitor. So for this past week, I have been using it, and just in short, it's awesome. But in addition to talking about what makes it awesome, I'm also going to talk about what the differences are between this and a real studio display, as well as, of course, if I'm keeping it in my setup or switching it back with the ultrawide. The first thing I want to talk about, though, I'm just not going to beat around the bush. There's no point. The whole reason I went through the struggle of taking it apart and reassembling it is to get that 5K display. And it is so nice. It's super sharp, is nice and bright, has a pretty punchy image with good contrast. I mean, these are all just basic words to describe it. When I first saw it and watched a video on here, it just felt like it was popping out of the screen. It does look a little different color and contrast wise than my MacBook display, but in terms of sharpness, it's the same, if not a little more, as the 16-inch display. But when you blow that up to 27 inches, it's incredible. The settings are easily adjustable too. You can adjust some just in macOS like any monitor. And then of course you have the control board on the back that I installed, and it has its own monitor menu now too. Part of the reason it might look different than my MacBook is this is nano texture. This is a glossy display. There actually are 5K iMacs you can get with nano texture. I would have actually preferred to do that, but it was double or triple the price of this kind of iMac. It's still a glorious 5K image, but in a room with a bunch of windows, I can notice reflections, which I don't see on my nano texture MacBook. But I will say, with a glossy display, the contrast is much bolder, and that is part of the reason it pops so much. And I would rather have this glossy display than my ultra-wide monitor's anti-reflective coating. That coating they put on that monitor made it look a whole lot softer, and especially on pages that are like a white background, it just looks off. It looks like grainy and not in a good way. And although doing something like video editing work, like that looks amazing, just for the sake of color consistency, I'll probably still adjust everything on my MacBook's display. That way, no matter if I'm working on my laptop or plugged into my setup, the colors I see will be based off of the MacBook display no matter what. Just overall though, it's hard to explain through video. There's just some like primal human feeling when it comes to sensory things, like just seeing such a full looking image. It's just so satisfying to my eyes, and no matter if I'm working on a video or just on a text document, I really enjoy using this display. But the iMac isn't the only device here with a fun display, so before I continue on talking about my full experience with it, I want to take a second to talk about the Nextpaper 70 Pro from TCL, who's actually the sponsor of this video. This phone has a truly beautiful 6.9-inch 120Hz Nextpaper 4.0 display. It has glare-free viewing, harmful blue light purification, and it can help reduce things like eye strain, which can help benefit things like your sleep. But it has a special switch here, and when you flip that, you go from the regular display mode into one of the next paper modes. That includes a full color ink display, which is my personal favorite. You can get a black and white ink display, and they have their Max Ink mode, which essentially turns the phone into an e-reader, and it is perfect for that. Performance-wise, it's built to sustain your workflow years down the line, even if it's a heavier workflow, because what's really nice about this phone is it comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM and up to 512 gigabytes of storage, but those can be expanded to 24 gigabytes of RAM with dynamic memory optimization, and also up to 2 terabytes of storage. It also has a 5200 milliampere hour battery, so it will last all day, and it takes just over half an hour to go from 0% battery to 50% with 33-watt fast charging. For the price of this phone especially, it is offering quite a lot, with a 50 megapixel main camera sensor with optical image stabilization and easy to use Muse film presets and touch-up tools to actually useful AI features like Google's Gemini, and of course the amazing display. So be sure to check out the Next Paper 70 Pro with my link below. Now back to my new monitor. It is an old iMac after all, so the bezels are pretty thick, but I actually don't mind too much. To me, it's almost like having those black bars when you're watching a movie on the top and bottom. It almost just frames what I'm working on well, but when it is placed in my MacBook, which has thin bezels, it does look a little outdated, and with the studio display, you won't have to deal with thick bezels. Hopefully it's not too noticeable on video, but this thing smudges so easily, and they are kind of hard to get off. Luckily, I don't plan on touching the screen all that much, so it's not a big deal. Also, again, because it's an iMac and not a studio display, you have this whole section on the bottom here, which raises it up a whole lot more than like a normal monitor. So on this desk shelf, it's a little too high for my taste. Without being on the desk shelf, it's just a little too low for my liking. Now, actually talking about my desk, you might notice it's a bit of a new layout. I did just switch it up and upgrade some things. So I actually plan on making a video talking about what I upgraded and why I have everything that I have here. But my current dock in here, it only supports 4K 60 display output. Obviously this monitor is 5K, and I feel like I wouldn't be doing it justice not taking advantage of the full 5K. So I have to plug in one cable for the dock, and then I do have to plug in a separate cable for the display. Really not a big deal at all. I will note, if I just plug in the monitor and not the dock, it does support pass-through charging. I guess that's because it's USB-C. I should also note, this is now just a shell of an iMac that we're using to support the 5K display. The ports don't work, the camera doesn't work, the speakers don't work. That is a little bit of a downside. I think there are ways to reconnect the speakers and camera with the board we put in, but if you get the studio display, that's kind of all working right out of the box. I was curious if I would end up appreciating the bigger size more or the better quality. Going from 34 inches in wide to 27 inches, although it is a big size difference compared to what I was using, I still find for pretty much everything, I can fit everything I need to on here, and it is still plenty. I mean, 27 inches is not small. But there were 3 main ways where I noticed the size difference the most. And the first is when I'm split screening apps. With the iMac, there's just not nearly the same amount of horizontal space anymore. It's doable, it's just not as comfortable. The second way is when I'm video editing, I can no longer see as much of the timeline from left to right, because again, it's just not as wide. And finally, the third thing is it's only 60 hertz. Now that is perfectly usable, and most times I probably won't really be able to tell. I'm not gaming on here, and it is much, much better at 60 hertz than whatever was happening with Luna display, but the ultra-wide was 100 hertz, so it was a little bit smoother, but that actually might be a bigger point against the studio display, because that is so much newer and still 60 hertz. You're paying $1,600 for 60 hertz. And pricing here is very important, so before I talk about who this is worth it for, I want to talk about the breakdown of the cost and also just value of what you're getting. Like I previously mentioned, with Luna display, if you go that route, that would be a $295 project. If you do what I did and replace the logic board, that makes it around a $350 to $400 project. And that price does include the tools because some of them were pretty specific to tech repair. My ultra-wide monitor you can get for $220. And of course, the Apple Studio display is $1,600. But I think what's most important about the studio display is it's good to go right out of the box. No matter if you're connecting a MacBook or a Mac Mini, Mac Studio, you're getting a good display bundle with, again, the camera, speakers, microphones. But is that worth 4 times the cost doing it yourself? I don't know. I think especially with options, if you're just mostly focused on screen display quality, you can get the LG 32-inch 6K monitor, and that is the same $1,600. Or even that Samsung 49-inch ultra-wide, you can get that on Amazon. I think it was on sale for like $600. So yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that the studio display has a pretty narrow audience of who it's actually worth it for. Always priced the way it is, but who should go through the process of converting an iMac versus just buying one of the alternatives? Well, first, I think if you have either, I guess, a more powerful 5K iMac or a non-5K iMac, Luna display with a cable plugged in is perfect and really easy. I think the biggest downsides with Luna display is it still has to work as a computer and boot. And also, if you want to get the full 5K display, for me, it was hit or miss. It was actually only miss. But now, as someone who's successfully converted an iMac, is it practical? Is it worth it? Should people try it? To be clear, I absolutely love this thing and I'm glad I did it, but I never want to do that again. And honestly, for most people, it's probably easier if you just avoid it entirely. Like, I'm slightly technically inclined. It wasn't even hard. I was just scared that 1 or 2 wrong moves and, I mean, the entire display is ruined. But if you are technically inclined and you just like to tinker around with tech, relatively speaking, it is not that expensive and it could be the perfect option for you, especially if you just have an old iMac laying around or you find one that doesn't work. Still though, just between the time it took, the effort it took, I mean, I don't even know if this will withstand the test of time, if the power supply will burn out or something. Spending a couple extra $100 to get a similar quality option, or even one of the many options at 4K resolution for significantly cheaper, it's just going to be so much less of a headache. And for most people, the size of your display is going to matter a lot more than the quality. Like, it's not like my ultra wide monitor I have is bad quality. It's just that this is a lot better. For my needs, as a video creator, a video editor, and just a video enjoyer, I do have some different priorities, but I do prefer this, and I am not going back to my ultra-wide. The iMac will be staying here in my setup, and I'm someone who likes to stretch my tech as far as possible, so that ultra-wide monitor now has a new home in my room with my gaming setup, and up there, that really enhances that experience as well, so that makes me happy. Again, I will have a desk tour going over everything that's going on over there soon, so feel free to subscribe if you're interested in that. But thank you for watching.